Better wait till I'm done before you do that. Is it going?
Mm-hmm.
My name's Chad. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Chad.
Hey, Chad.
Appreciate you guys coming out tonight. This is our foundation meeting, and the purpose of the foundation meeting is... Well, have any of you guys been in there? Anybody been in there to the meeting? Well, what we do, and I'll talk about it in a minute, we cover a little bit out of the book each night. Maybe sometimes one or two paragraphs, sometimes a couple of pages, and we take a real in-depth look at a small piece of the program. So the purpose of this meeting is to kind of get an overview. What is AA? What is alcoholism? Kind of answer some big questions. The funny thing is, you don't have to be new to not know the answers to some of those questions. I mean, there are folks that come in here with some time and sit and listen to one of our foundation meetings and learn some pretty good stuff. But I'm going to cover a few things tonight. I'm going to start out and talk a little bit about what AA is, and then talk a little bit about this book. And this is just a big book, just like this one. It's just the Cadillac version that my sponsor bought me. Isn't that cool? Leather. Anyway, I'll talk a little bit about the book, a little bit about this group, and then the good stuff. Then I get to talk about what is alcoholism and really look at that. So to start out with, before I get started, I'll tell you a little bit about me, but not much. I've been sober since April 2nd, 2003. So coming up on freaking 8 years, almost. I mean, that's a miracle. This is my home group. I'm here. If I'm not here on a Tuesday night, it's because I'm out of town or I'm very sick or something. I mean, this is my home group, and I'm committed to being here early, staying late, and helping out. It means a lot to me. And I've got a sponsor, and he's in there. But the most important thing I can tell you about me is that I'm an alcoholic. But through working these steps, I've recovered from alcoholism. And what I mean by recovered is that I am real clear today that I can't drink. Right? The difference is that if I'm an alcoholic that's not recovered and you hand me a beer, I might say, well, it won't hurt this time. It's just one beer. Sounds like a pretty good idea. Versus right now, being recovered, if you hand me a beer, I'm going to say, whoo, that looks good and everything, but that's a bad idea. I don't need any of that. So that's the difference. It's real simple. But recovered doesn't mean that I can drink now. If I start drinking, I'm right back where anybody else is. And before I go any further, I want to tell you, if you're sitting in this room and you're not an alcoholic but you're a drug addict, this is an AA meeting. So I'm going to talk about drinking. I'm going to talk about alcoholism. But in my experience, what I'm talking about can just as easily be applied to drugs and to addiction. So just in your mind, just replace the words. Okay, so now a little bit about what is Alcoholics Anonymous. And everybody's been to an AA meeting, right? Never been to one? First AA meeting? Wow, okay. Okay, so those of you who have been, you've probably heard the preamble, and it goes something like, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I want to challenge that just a little bit, because that says that Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women. And by fellowship, what we're talking about is the meetings, the people in the meetings before the meetings out in the parking lot, the coffee shop after the meetings, the potluck dinners, the sober softball, whatever, the conferences, which is great stuff. That's great things to get involved in. It's a great substitute for the places where I was hanging out before I got here, right? But that ain't all AA is. What we're going to focus on tonight is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a way of life. Through practicing certain principles, it totally changes the way I live. All right? Brings about a change in me. I become a new person. All right? I'm not the same guy that I was. And I've got experience with that. See, I know that because I hung out in AA for about a year, where I went to a lot of meetings, I went to all the AA functions. With about a year sober, I did something really stupid. And my sponsor instructed me to take a look at my life. And my life wasn't a lot different than it was when I walked in the door. And his suggestion to me in a very loving way was, why don't you try working the steps? Well, then what happened when I worked the steps is I started taking part in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it completely changed my life. And I'm not that guy that I was then, that was sober but going to meetings every day and still a jerk, just like he was when he walked in the door. So the steps are what's changed me, and that is what the program of AA is. Okay, that's enough about AA. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this group. This group's called the Primary Purpose Group, and that comes from one of our traditions. For now, it'll suffice to say that our traditions are kind of the rules that govern the groups. They're not really rules, they're more like guidelines, but they're just kind of guidelines that we follow that keep us from messing this thing all up. And one of them says that each group has but one primary purpose, and that's to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. Well, what happened is about 4.5 years ago, a few people got together and decided they wanted to start a group based on this idea. We're going to study the book, the big book. We're going to do what it says, and then we're going to go out and carry its message. All right? Well, I think that was about 8 people. I think there were about 30 people at the first few meetings. And, now we get 150 in there doing the same thing. So apparently it's a pretty good idea. It's worked pretty well. Okay, that's enough about the group. A little bit about the book. This book is referred to as our basic text, like a textbook. Everybody likes textbooks, right?
I actually do. I'm one of those.
Do you? Great. I always tell a story that I had about 20 guys in here, and usually there's not near this many women. It's usually like 20 guys and like 2 girls that are sitting there going. Because, if you got 20 guys in a foundation meeting, there's an energy going on there that is not healthy. So I'm sitting here one night, and I always ask that question. I raise my hand, and nobody raised their hand. This one guy sitting next to me, he goes, and then he looked around, and he put his hand down real quick. I don't like textbooks at all there. It's not tough to like textbooks, but anyway, this book is kind of like a textbook. What it does is it presents a problem. It presents a problem, and then it gives a solution to the problem, explains a solution, but then it gives a set of instructions on how to get to that solution, right? This is not the kind of book where you read it and say, well, that's pretty good, you should try this, and put it on the shelf, right? It's meant to be studied, and the instructions, follow the instructions, actually do what it says. It doesn't work near as well as a theory as it does as a set of instructions. And what else I want to say about the book? I usually read a couple things on it, but I think I covered it. Okay, so that's what I want to say about I think I will read the statistics. This book was published in 1939. The first edition was published in 1939, and it has a foreword to the first edition. And Charlie read it tonight, and actually I may read a couple sentences out of the foreword to the first edition. But it says, "We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book." And what I like to say when I read that is that this book didn't come about because a couple guys sat down and said, you know what, we should start a program about how to help alcoholics recover from alcoholism. That's not what happened. What happened is this crazy series of events took place with this guy coming in here and doing this and this guy and all these things happening, and some hopeless alcoholics, low bottom, I'm sure they have some great stories, low bottom bad drunks found a way out. They found a way out and turned their lives around. And they started going out and telling other guys how to do it. And it started kind of having this domino effect, right? And those guys would go carry the message and guys, bad, hopeless alcoholics that nobody had any idea what to do with them, started getting sober and staying that way, right? And they started thinking, you know what? We've got a program here that works. We better get it down on paper or we're going to lose it by word of mouth. Right? So what they did is they wrote a book to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered. So that's why it says all through here, we did this and we did this and we did this, because it's what they did. It's what they did, then they wrote it down. So when you're reading this, we're not reading what somebody's good idea is that they learned in college. We're reading about what they actually did. And then since then, this has been backed up by millions, right? Not 100 anymore. So this book was published in 1939, the first edition. Then in 1950, was it 54? 54?
Oh, sorry.
Or 55. In
1950.
1950.
No, the book was published in 1939.
39, and the second edition was published in 55. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, 55.
Yeah.
By that time, wait, that's the first edition. By that time, let's see, it says that we had gone from 100 members to 150,000 in 16 years. 6,000 groups. Okay. They went out and kind of did a study and came up with some statistics. And here's what those statistics. Now, before I read those, though, I want to share just a quick story. I went to a 30-day treatment center, and we went in there. One of the first days, I'm not sure when it was. I was kind of in a fog, but we sit in the main meeting in the morning at 8:00, and there were about 40 of us in the room, and we were in 4 rows of tables, so there's about 10 people in each row, and one of the counselors, whoever was running the meeting, told us what our odds were of getting sober and staying that way. I think for a year. I think they said here's the chances of you getting sober and staying that way for a year. He said it's about 1 out of 10. So about 4 of you. So if you look to your left and look to your right, 1 of you on that row is going to stay sober. And my experience was we didn't do that good. You know, we had an 18-year-old kid get hit by a train. We had 2 guys OD together in a motel room on the same night. They found them the next, or a few days later or whatever. But I mean, crazy stuff happening. You know, that's what happens to people like us. But this says of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses. And among the remainder, those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. Other thousands came to a few meetings and at first decided they didn't want the program. But great numbers of these, about 2 out of 3, began to return as time passed. So according to this, you're looking at about 80%. Or somewhere in there. Maybe more. That's pretty good odds when you're talking about hopeless alcoholics. You know, we don't get here because it sounds like a good idea. We get here because nothing else works, you know. So that's a pretty good chance. But the key thing it says here is of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried. So you don't have to be smart. You don't have to be rich. You can be crazy. And you can be living on the streets. You know, you can be in bad shape. But if you come in here and really try, you got a damn good chance. Okay. So now, we get into my favorite part. Now we talk about what is alcoholism. And I like this so much because, well, let me put it this way. If you were to go around the whole country and ask people, just random people, what does it mean to be an alcoholic? You're going to get a lot of different answers, right? And that's expected. You know, that's expected. I mean, if you ask my grandma, what does it mean to be an alcoholic? I would figure she probably wouldn't really know. But the sad thing is if you go around AA meetings and start asking people, what does it mean to be an alcoholic? You get a lot of different answers. I mean, I work with a lot of guys, and a lot of the guys I work with they're not like you, they've been to AA a lot. And I'll say, so are you an alcoholic? And they always say, oh yeah. Or a drug addict, one of the two. But if I ask one of those two questions, they always say, oh yeah, you have no idea. I mean, we gotta be proud of something, right? They're always like, oh God, yeah, I mean, I did this and this. Well, then I like to follow that up with this question. Okay, so what does that mean? What makes you different? And that's when I start getting the craziest answers. I mean, I had a guy who had been to treatment a number of times in AA for a long time, and I asked him what it means to be alcoholic, and he said, well, you see, I'm a perfectionist. And he kind of went on for a little while. Okay, so all perfectionists are alcoholics.
Don't tell my mom.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right there, He said, oh, no. I said, okay, so what makes you different? Okay, so what makes us different? What makes the alcoholic different? Okay, the book is real clear on it. Now, it doesn't give a definition of the word alcoholic, but it gives a damn good description. And it takes a long time doing it because it wants to drive home what it means to be an alcoholic. Because I need to know. If I'm going to say I'm an alcoholic, I need to know what that means. I need to know what's wrong with me. I need a good diagnosis. So here's what it means. The first problem it talks about is written in what's called the doctor's opinion. Now, before I read it, I want to say just a little, this is kind of interesting how this came about. This is written by Dr. William Silkworth. And it was, of course, written in the 30s. Now, I don't know if it's because Dr. Silkworth was a really good guy, or if it's because it was the Great Depression and that's the only job he could get. But for some reason, Silkworth worked with lots of alcoholics. That's really all he did. He ran what today we would call a detox. But it was a hospital, probably the most well-known hospital in the world for working with alcoholics, called Towns Hospital in New York. And he had guys with drinking problems in and out of there a lot. And they really didn't know what to do with people. It's not like a treatment center today. They didn't go on, musical journeys or whatever that we do today. All they really knew to do was they had experimental things. And nothing worked really well. But what they knew to do was bring them in, put them in a bed, get them hydrated, get some food in their systems, get rid of the shakes. Sometimes wean them off alcohol with alcohol, right? Get them completing sentences. And after a few days, send them out the door. And what these guys had in common is when they're walking out the door, they would say, whew, that was bad. I will never do that again. And the fact is, you'd never see them again. But occasionally, there would be a guy come through in the same condition, off a bad drunk. They'd get him a bed, give him the same treatment. They'd walk out the door, say the very same thing. And 2 weeks later, they're back. And this time they're in worse shape than they were the time before. So Dr. Silkworth and the folks he worked with came up with a very controversial opinion at the time. He started to talk about alcoholism as an illness, saying that alcohol affected the bodies of the alcoholics differently. Not just messed up in the head, but actually had a different effect on the body. And here's what he said. And this is going to be, if you're following along in the book, if you're in a 4th edition book, this is on Roman numeral 28. Now, I don't know whose idea it was to put Roman numerals in a book for alcoholics.
What's 28?
28 would be XXVIII. Alcoholism had a little bit of an effect on my education. I don't know if that's true for anybody else, but up here on the top it says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. I don't know about you, but when I first read that, I was like, okay, whatever. And I kept going, looking for something that I could understand. But I had someone break this down to me, and what this means, well, first off, he's talking about the action of alcohol. Now, if you've ever had a few drinks in a row in a pretty short amount of time, you know what the action of alcohol is. First off, it makes me sing really well. Alright? Well, we all know what the action of alcohol is. Okay, so it's talking about the action of alcohol on chronic alcoholics. Now, a chronic alcoholic, what does it mean to be a chronic? Now, if you're a drug addict and you're sitting here, we're not talking about that kind of chronic. This is different. A chronic alcoholic means someone who's an alcoholic who has alcoholism now and who's going to have it from now on. Right? Not the person who can just say, whew, that was a bad run, I'm done with that, and they're good the rest of their lives. We're talking about the chronic alcoholic, the one who keeps getting drunk and getting worse and says, I'm not going to do it anymore, and keeps doing it, right? Okay. It says the action of alcohol on this chronic alcoholic is a manifestation of an allergy. When I first started hearing about this allergy to alcohol, I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about, because I'm thinking about sneezing, watery eyes, runny nose, rash. When this book was written, allergy was a fairly new word. And what it actually means is an abnormal physical reaction. It just means that if you have a room full of people and they all ingest a certain substance into their bodies, that it has one effect on most of them, but on a few rare cases, in a few instances, it has a completely different effect. Right? So for the alcoholic, it's estimated that about 10% of the people in the world have the potential to be an alcoholic. Alcohol has a different effect. Okay. Then it talks about it being a manifestation of an allergy. A simple definition for manifestation is how it shows up. So how does this allergy show up in the alcoholic?
I had a question on the chronic alcoholism.
Yes. What's that?
So you're saying a chronic alcoholic can't get rid of the alcoholism even if he follows the 4 set of principles that this book teaches?
If you're the guy that this book is describing, no more drinking.
I'm a drug addict, so yeah.
No more drugs.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I know stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'll get into this more in a minute.
Yeah. All right.
But we can get to a point to where we can stay sober. But the whole idea of drinking successfully, if you're an alcoholic, yeah, you have to forget about that.
Yeah, I know.
Bad news. Okay. So now how does the allergy show up? A phenomenon of craving. I went to a meeting at the Primary Purpose Group in Dallas. They have a step study meeting or a step speaker on Saturday nights. And this lady was doing a presentation on step 1. And I love the way she described this physical allergy, this craving. And at first I was getting a little irritated because she was talking about having a craving for chocolate. And I was like, oh my God, somebody's going to compare alcohol to chocolate. It's really getting on my nerves. Not that I'm judgmental by any means. Okay, so she's up here and she's got this whiteboard, right, like this one. And she says, I get a craving for chocolate, and she draws this candy bar, right? And she says, this represents the craving I have for chocolate. So I eat the candy bar, right? I break down and I eat it. And then she says, but that didn't satisfy the craving. I still have a craving. So she draws this little candy bar like this, and she says, now this represents my craving, and I eat this one. I give in, I eat it. And she draws another one like this. She said, now this represents my craving, right? Okay. That's not like the craving I have for alcohol. So she erases it and she draws a wine glass and she says, this represents the craving that I have for alcohol, so I drink this drink. And then she draws one this big and she says, now this represents my craving. I'm definitely drinking this one. And then she draws one that fills the whole board and she says, now this represents my craving. That's a much better description of what my allergy to alcohol is like. If I'm giving in to that first 1 or 2, it's over. I will drink more, a lot more, and I usually don't stop until I have to. right? Until I pass out or until I get myself in a position where I can jail, who knows? What's it going to be? Now I want to clarify something though. That does not have to happen every time for a person to be an alcoholic. It depends on how far down the line you are. There were times early on where I could go out and have 2 drinks and go out and have 2 drinks. All right? Now, it's not that way for everybody. Some guys, first time they drink, they lose control, and every time thereafter. But some of us are not that way, especially early on. Some of us can control it sometimes. Okay, but here's the bad news. Sometimes I could control it, sometimes I couldn't. I didn't get to pick which way it was going to be. It was kind of a roll of the dice, and it seemed like the times I would lose control were it's like Mom's birthday. It's never the good times. Never when I got nothing to do all weekend, Okay. So the allergy is one of the symptoms that the alcoholic has. It's what happens when I start drinking. Right? When I start drinking, I tend to lose control. I don't know what's going to happen after that. Okay. If that's all that being an alcoholic is, if that's the only problem we got, there's a real simple solution. Just stop. If taking the first drink causes me to lose control, don't take the first drink. That's easy. Problem solved. No need for AA. Get married, have babies, feed the homeless on Thanksgiving, go to college. Life is great. You can leave now. Okay. But the alcoholic has another problem. The book says the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind. See, what happens for me is I have a bad drunk and I say, I'm not ever doing that again. And then you give me enough time, maybe a month or 2, maybe 10 hours. I change my mind every single time. And I think that sometimes we confuse people because we give the impression that to be an alcoholic you have to be holding a drink in your hand saying, no, don't drink, and then drink. It's not always like that. The way it was for me is I just changed my mind. Against all common sense and rational thinking in the world, I'm living in a salvage yard. Yet I think this time I can control it. Right? Over here at the beginning of the chapter on alcoholism, it says the first step, so we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. I try not to read much of this thing at a time. I'm a teacher, and I know that once I start reading a lot, I start losing people. It talks about conceding to your innermost self that you're an alcoholic, and if you were to, you guys, like when Austin, Texas, man, I lived in Oklahoma City and I moved to Austin. I was like, God dang, there's a guy flying a sign on every corner. Every corner. Right? And some of those folks, you can drive by them and look at them and say, whoo, that is an alcoholic. Or look at them and say, that's a crack addict. Or if you've been around and had a lot of experience with a lot of, you can start spotting which kind, This one does everything. Okay. And everyone driving by can look at that person and say, now that's a person that has no control over their drinking. But there's one person that thinks they still do. See, if you were to take that guy flying that sign and open him up and look deep inside, there's a good chance you would see that deep down in here, he thinks that if he can tweak it just right, this time he's got it. Now, I don't know if anybody in here relates to that, but I damn sure do. I would get to a point and I would think, you know what? I'm a real man, right? By God, a man can handle this. I'm going to control myself tonight. You know, that's the way it looked for me. Now, all our heads tell us something slightly different. But whatever it is, if you're an alcoholic, you change your mind. What it says over here on page 24. This is in italics, or as Charlie says, squiggly writing, which means it's very important. It says, the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. Have any of you guys ever sat in an AA meeting and heard someone say, I woke up this morning and chose not to drink? Or heard someone say, don't drink no matter what? You may have ever heard that one? Mm-hmm. I love that one. Don't drink no matter what. That's a damn good idea. Mm-hmm. And that'll work really well unless you're an alcoholic. Because if you're an alcoholic, I'm an alcoholic. I drink no matter what. No matter what. There is no humiliation or suffering that will keep me sober for very long. There's no fear that'll keep me sober. There's no mom, no girlfriend, no daughter. I've got an 11-year-old daughter that turned 4 while I was in treatment. All right? Could not sober me up. I love that girl more than anything in the world. But I could not stay sober for her. I don't have a choice. Left to my own power, I do not have a choice. I will always change my mind. I will always go back. Now, I'm going to go back here to the doctor's opinion, and it's really cool because Dr. Silkworth, he wasn't an alcoholic. But he says a couple lines here that describe me so well, it amazes me that he wasn't. Down here on the bottom of that same page, Roman numeral 28, or XXVII for the I, XXVII for the Roman numeral illiterate like me. Down here on the very bottom, it says, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is harmful, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. If you're sitting in here and you're new, your life ain't normal. I just want to let you know. If you think it is, it's not. It says they are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Now that's the line I really want to look at. There's some good stuff in there, but that's what I want to look at. Dr. Silkworth is describing me sober. When I am sober, I am restless. Okay, so it's like I'm sitting in the chair at home, completely sober. I'm getting a little uncomfortable sitting there. I'm thinking, you know what, man, I need to get up. I need to go be around some people. So I go hang out with some of my friends for a little while, right? Well, they're getting on my nerves a little bit, so I'm thinking, man, I got to get away from these people. I got this little project going in the garage. I think I'll go work on it. So I go start working on it, and it just ain't working right. And I'm thinking, God dang, I got to get out of here. I got to go sit down for a while. So I find myself back in the same damn chair I started in. I just don't know where to be. Nothing feels right. It says I'm irritable. Now, I don't really get irritable. It just seems everybody around me is an idiot. You know, this is me sober. It's like when I'm trying to sit down and relax, everybody around me is just moving around. They just need to chill. Or when there's something happening, people need to get off their asses and get busy, right? Or they're driving too fast or they're driving too slow, or everybody's doing something wrong, and I notice every little thing. And it's driving me crazy. And then it says discontented. sometimes someone would come to me and say, God dang, Chad, what's wrong? And I'd be like, I don't know. It just seems like nothing's right. Just nothing's right. Just unhappy. That's me sober. Unless I can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. I know where I can get that sense of ease and comfort. I don't even have to have the bottle open or the bag or whatever it is. I can have it in my hand and that sense of ease and comfort comes over me. First time I got drunk, it was with 3 other guys, and it was 4 of us. It was our first time for all of us, and those 3 guys had a damn good time. I had a spiritual experience. It changed my life. I saw the world in a whole new light. It solved problems I didn't even know I had. And I knew at that moment I was going to do that no matter what. I knew it. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. Alright? Okay. Now my girlfriend, when she wants to let her inhibitions down a little bit, have a good time, be more social, or if she's stressed out and needs to relax, she has a couple drinks. There's nothing wrong with that. If I could do that, I would. But I don't really have a couple drinks. When I get that sense of ease and comfort, I wake up in jail. Alright? So we passed up sense of ease and comfort hours ago or days ago. Okay. So what happens to the alcoholic? See if this sounds familiar to anybody. I drink and drink and drink and drink until I have to stop. Right? Until for some reason I have to stop. And then I stay sober. And I stay sober. And I stay sober until I can't stay sober anymore. And then I drink. Until I can't drink anymore. And then I stay sober until I can't stay sober anymore. And that's my life. Right? And then think just for a second about what the rest of that life is like. Right? About where I'm living. What life is like for my wife and my daughter and my mother. When's the last time I took a shower? Work. When's the last time I went to work? It's a train wreck living a life like that. Okay. That's what it means to be an alcoholic. That's what it's like. It's completely hopeless. It's completely hopeless. There's nothing we can do on our own power. The book refers to it as being beyond human aid. If any person could have gotten me sober and kept me that way, it would have been that little girl who I love so much. Charlie described my daughter as false advertising. I was like, what are you talking about, false advertising? He said, well, she's one of those kids where when you meet her and spend some time with her, you think to yourself, oh, wow, she's great. I got to have one of those. And then you have one and you find out they're not all like that, I got this great kid. I love her more than anything in the world. I mean, I wanted to be a dad way before I was ever a dad. And she wasn't on purpose or whatever. I mean, I don't know how you guys do it, but that's how I do it. But I was excited too, right? And I have this great daughter. Love her so much. Live in a small town, right? Could see her anytime I wanted. And I would go 3 months and never see her. I would go a long time and never go see her. And I would tell all my alcoholic and drug addict friends that her mama won't let me see her. Right? And I would tell it and tell it and tell it till I would believe it. Because in order for me to live with it, I kind of had to. Right? But the truth is, her mama always wanted me to see her. Always. And I wanted to see her. But I couldn't. Because I couldn't stay sober. Okay. Now I'm going to go over here to page 45, I think. I haven't done this in a while. I'm forgetting my page numbers. Page 45. Okay. In the first full paragraph, it says lack of power. That was our dilemma. So what's our problem? We're powerless. Lack of power. That's the problem. Okay, so what logically follows that? If I want to stay sober, we had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. No problems there. I need to find a power. It's got to be greater than me, because I damn sure can't do the job. And it needs to be a power by which I can live, because I got a serious living problem. Okay. Obviously. But where and how do I find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself which will solve your problem. Okay, so big important point here, big misunderstanding. This book is not strategies on how not to drink. This book doesn't tell me that because it doesn't work. For the person this book is written for, strategies on how to stay sober don't work. This book explains the drinking problem and then drops it. And then it tells me, step by step, from their experience, how to hook up with power. How to find power. A power that's greater than me and a power that I can live by. Right? That's what these steps are about. Okay. Over here on 47. Now, by the way, this brings us into the second step. Over here on 47, it gives me a question, a two-part question. It says, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there's a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him he is on his way. Okay. So, contrary to popular belief, you don't have to understand God. You don't have to have faith in God. You don't even have to believe in God. All you have to do is be willing to believe. You just can't shut the door on it. Right? Now, had you introduced me to AA when I was 25, I would have shut the door on it. But introducing me to AA when I was 28, I was like, whatever. If you say it works, give me something. That's all we have to do. That's all we have to do to start this program. Is just say, okay, God dang, you say you're as bad as me. For some reason I believe you. You're not as bad as me anymore. You say this works for you. Maybe it'll work for me. Okay. So, I'm not going to ask. Sometimes I have people raise their hand, but it seems kind of like a bad thing to do. But some of us come in here and, well, we get three types of people in here. We get the type in here who come in here and they're all about God. Oh yeah, I'm all, God sounds good. Bring on God. We get people in here who don't even want to hear the word. As soon as you say the word, they're like, ching. And then we get some who came in here like me that were like, man, I don't give a damn. God, whatever. I mean, I could care less. Program works for all three types. And anywhere in between. Over here on page 46. If you're one of those who has a little bit of a problem with this, it says, much to our relief. Down here kind of at the bottom, the last full paragraph. It says, much to our relief. We discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect the contact with Him. So I don't have to come in here with much. As a matter of fact, I get to come up with my own conception. And it doesn't have to be very good. As long as I'm seeking. That's what's important. Okay. So now, what I want to look at. Over here, if you guys have been to AA meetings, have you heard the promises? You ever heard those? Well, that's a good question, because usually you hear the 9th step promises. And I'm not going to read those. I'm going to read the 10th step promises. Okay. So over here on page 84 at the bottom of the page, it says, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. By this time sanity has returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. Want a beer? Hell no. That's bad news for me. Okay. We react sanely and normally. How would a sane person react if they had an allergy to alcohol? They would not drink alcohol. Okay. We find this has happened automatically. I just turn it down. I don't even have to think. I just turn it down automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. Now, I want to be clear about something here. When it says without any thought or effort on our part, it means that I have not been trying not to drink. If I'm working this program the way this book lines it out, I don't have to try not to drink. It just happens as I'm working the program and hook up with power. It says we're not fighting it, we're not avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off, because that doesn't work. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. Over here on page 24, it says we have no choice. The 10th step promises say the problem has been removed. Now, here's what I'm going to close with. We start the work with a prayer on page 63. Everything before that is learning. The first thing I do as far as the work goes is I say a prayer on page 63. What I just read is on page 84. There it is. That's what you have to do to get there. If you're not doing it and you've got this problem, go find somebody that'll take you through the work out of this book. If you can't find somebody, I can find you somebody. Hook up with them, do this work. I had no idea life could be this good. No idea. I have absolutely no desire to go back to drinking. Not even a couple drinks. No desire. All right. I appreciate you guys coming tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.